client had doubled the sales in her business. Doubled. That's freaking awesome, right? They'd had some of their best months ever. She runs her business with her hubby. And she's like, I don't understand, Sarah. We have made more money than I have ever made. And I still freak out about going into the supermarket. They had hired people. They had put systems and processes. They had done everything right. And she couldn't understand where it was going. She's looking at it going, more money's coming in, but more money's not staying. And we're not getting any further ahead. We're making way more money than we were when we were doing this 12 months ago, but it's not sticking. I told her, this is not a sales problem. This is not a revenue problem at all. I could see her going, it has to be. They tell you have to make more sales to make this business game work. And so I said it to her and I watched it land and I could see her brain shorting out because it wasn't what she'd been told. I said, this is a paid twice problem. At the time, she had absolutely no idea that was even a category of problem that existed inside her business. For those previous 12 months, she'd been solving for the wrong thing. She'd been solving for a sales problem that she didn't have. You don't get paid as much as a man running his own business. And I just don't think that's fair. You and me, we take a far bigger risk than a man doing this. And yet somehow your reward still sucks comparatively. When I was having this conversation the other day about this fairness conversation when it comes to us running established businesses versus men, and everything in my body wants to say it's not a thing. I've been playing this business game for 20 years and I genuinely want to say that it has changed enough that there is now fairness in the playing field for you and I in the business world. The truth is it's not. To start from a position that isn't even accurate makes the whole framework fail. The very first thing I want to address here is that fairness conversation. Because we both, men and women, we both take a risk when it comes to putting our blood, sweat and tears and probably some money, probably some investment into something new or buying something that already exists. We both take that same risk in terms of the business. What I don't think is the same is the cultural risk. Do I think the gap might be starting to get smaller? Yes. Do I think that now when men look at the way some of my clients are building their businesses, some other women are building their businesses where they have actually built these incredible, impactful, profitable businesses and not miss dinner or school camp or family holidays, do I think they get a little bit envious? Yes. But I do think that in order for them to build the business in the first place, there is not a cultural risk for him. If he works long hours building his business, creating whatever he is building, he gets praised for it like he's a hero. When I was doing long hours, I was constantly questioned about my commitment to being a mother and whether it was too much. You might have heard the same thing. When he is not there at kindy pickup or at school pickup, that's because he's busy providing for his family. And if he does show up, oh dear God, world's best dad running a business and doing pickup. Yet, so much judgment in what I was and wasn't doing by cultural standards that had I been born as a guy, I would never have had to negotiate. I think you take a bigger risk when it comes to standing up and having conversations. Still, after 20 years of being in business and me always having the banking conversations, every time the mortgages come up, they ring Jonny still. He's never once been able to answer one of their questions. Yes, we collectively make decisions about that stuff together, but he can't answer those. So there is still a risk that you inherently take that a man will never have to take. And so the fairness factor when it comes to the reward that we get in our business should meet that risk. Comparatively, I think, based on the fact that we're taking more risk as a whole, we are having to navigate a whole lot more potholes than he did. I feel like there should be a better return for that, for you and me. If we think about it like this, that you and I are taking a far bigger risk when you add it all up than a man doing this, and yet your reward still sucks comparatively, I think we should have a different conversation. So let's start here, because how much did you pay yourself last month as a salary from the business to you, like you pay your employees, before anything else got paid? Not what was left, but what did you pay yourself as the person doing the actual work in this business? Because one of the roles you have in your business, the things you do in the business. For some people, they're actually showing up and doing the client work. For some people, they're leading the team. I've got physio clients who are actually the physios as well as running the business. I've got lawyer clients who are actually lawyers as well as running the legal business. If they're not paying themselves as the physio and the lawyer, why not? And if you're not paying yourself as the person doing the actual work of being in this business, and more still leading and running this business, being at the least the general manager, maybe even a fancier, if you need to be, the CEO of actually running their business, those roles get paid. And for a lot of women that are actually turning over real money, we've got real clients, real teams, we're getting people real results. The answer here is either uncomfortable or genuinely unclear. You just genuinely don't know. And I think the second one is probably the more dangerous. I think if it's uncomfortable because you look at it and you know it's not enough, then, that discomfort means we know what the number is. But the second one, the lack of clarity, unclear means that what you've built, the system inside your business, was never designed to pay you. It means it's been designed to pay everyone else and everything else first and give you whatever's left. And that's why you don't know what the number is, because you don't know yet where all the money has to go first before you can get what's left over. Here's the concept that really changes this. We call it paid twice. It sits in that presence domain because it helps shift the worthiness conversation. It helps shift the conversation about your value being tied to how much you're doing. Because if you're sitting in that avoiding instead of embodying, you're probably not getting paid twice. This entire accelerator, this entire group of concepts is all about, for you to have fair reward from your business, you must get paid for both the roles that you carry risk in. When you own and operate a business, you wear two hats. You are the employee doing the work, delivering the service, running the operations, and you're also a shareholder. You own the asset here. You took the risk to build it, and you have a whole lot of capital in it, not just the cash you've been pouring into it, but years of your life, your expertise, your reputation, We believe that every business owner deserves to be paid for both. Paid for the work that you do as the employee and paid as the shareholder. Most of the women I work with are being paid for neither properly when we get started, or they're paying themselves a fraction of what the role would cost on the open market. Now, we actually learned this the hard way with Jonny, not with me, in our boat business, because we were running the business like most of us do. We're running the business. At the end of the year, we have a look at the profit. We go, what should we take? But Jonny was operating as the skipper on that boat. And in 2018, he had a major fall, which led to being diagnosed with something which meant he couldn't skipper anymore. And we had never thought about the business with a market salary for a skipper in there. If we take you out of your business and we have to pay someone to do the role that you play in your business, what would that cost? We recognized very quickly that we were not paying what Jonny as a skipper would get paid on the open market. And it's the same with the women I'm working with. They're either paying themselves a minimum wage or paying them based on tax advice from their accountant, but not thinking about what would happen if we had to take them out of their business and hire for it. And often they're not getting a return on their shareholding either, because the business is consuming everything it generates, reinvesting it back in the business. The question we always want to ask here is, where are you in the pecking order of money distribution in your business? Are you getting the scraps, or are you paid first? As women, we have been so conditioned that fairness is not required that we don't even react anymore. There's this brilliant study and quite funny TED talk about capuchin monkeys. And they had these two monkeys, they lived together in a troop, but they gave these two monkeys the same task. They're right next to each other, they can see what's going on. The first monkey does a task, gives a rock to the researcher, and gets a piece of cucumber and is very happy with the cucumber. And then the second monkey does the same task, gives the stone across, and the researcher gives that monkey a grape. And he has this great line in the TED talk about how the monkey's tastes line up with how expensive things are in the supermarket, because cucumbers are cheap and grapes are not. I guess that depends on where you are in the world. That's true for us here, whether we're in New Zealand or here in Thailand. The grapes are definitely the more expensive option, more valuable option. And so they get it to do it again. Now the first monkey has seen the second monkey get this significantly better payment for the stone of a grape. The cucumber monkey does the task again. The cucumber monkey knows it has to get a stone and give it to the researcher. It does it. And then gets a piece of cucumber. Looks over at the other monkey that got the grape and throws this cucumber, throws it back in the face of the researcher, and revolts against this absolute unfairness in terms of return. I have done the same thing that you just asked them to do, and I did not get fair reward for that. The cucumber monkey knows that is not okay. That they have not ever been trained to think that it's okay to get cucumber when someone else is getting grape for exactly the same result. Yet I'm seeing a whole lot of women who have been given just the cucumber and been told to be grateful with it. We don't get upset about it. In fact, you've been told so long that paying yourself last is how you build a business, that the profit, that what's left over after everything else is sorted is what you get paid, that you have come to accept that is okay. And here at the Moxie Movement, when we build out your business, we know this is not true. So if you are sitting anywhere other than paid first, and more importantly, paid twice inside your business, then we've got a whole stack of tools that sit inside that paid twice accelerator to make this happen. The one I want to share with you today is what we call the non-negotiable profit philosophy. And so we want you to think of profit as the non-negotiable return on the risk you've taken. It's not a reward for good behavior. It does not get unlocked at the next sales goal. Profit must be a structural requirement from day one. And so in the non-negotiable profit philosophy, we talk about how profit is basically a non-negotiable fixed cost to your business, that it should be baked in to everything you do across your whole business. And if you can't make it non-negotiable, it doesn't work. We make this a structural requirement from day one. If I was building a business from scratch, I would start there. We make you getting paid twice as the standard, not a goal, not a future state. It's a minimum requirement for a business genuinely working for you in your life. Getting to paid twice requires you to know some things. Getting that non-negotiable profit philosophy working, it's going to require you to know some things. First up, I want to know, what would the genuine market rate be for what you do in this business? The market rate for your role, the employee salary. If you had to hire for everything you do in your business, what would you have to pay someone to come and do your job? That's the minimum salary you should be getting. You also want to know, what is the minimum return you want on your shares, on your shareholder, as your shareholder, that makes this worth it? If you put your money in the bank, they tell you they might give you 3%, but they really give you 0.5%. We definitely want to be better than that. And you have to put your money in the stock market over time, depending on what's going on, but it seems that over time, 7 to 10% is a goal. What's going to be your minimum profit that makes owning and running this business worthwhile? Because when you make profit non-negotiable by understanding that profit is a fixed cost in your business, that your salary is a fixed cost in your business, then you start looking at what the business actually needs to do. What does my business actually need to do to fund both? What structural changes do I need in my business to ensure that it generates the funds for both without robbing one to pay the other? You can't steal from your profit to pay your salary, and you can't steal from your salary to pay your profit. If you were two different individuals, if you were an employee in this business and a shareholder, those two people would never allow for the robbing to take place. Both of them would be having a fairness conversation with you. And because you're the same person, you don't have it. You don't have that conversation. Around here, we set paid twice as a standard, and we think that fairness conversation should be had by you, with you, about your employee role and your shareholder role. And when I get started, most of the women I work with have never run those three numbers together. Not because you can't. We're talking age 8 maths here, people. This is not because you don't like numbers or you're not good with numbers. You know why you haven't done it? It's because nobody's asked you to do it from this angle before. And today we are. Question today is, how do you know if you're undercharging? I think it depends on how you ask this question. Because I love you. But the women that I work with have this terrible habit of saying these two words together. Feels like I'm undercharging. So the way that this question to me is worded is, how do you know if you're undercharging? Which is a smart question, because it's not about the feelings. It's actually about fundamentally what's been done. What does the data say about the numbers? And the reason I think this is really good is because I think the emotional conversation is overcooked. The conversation that they have is that you're undercharging in your business because you don't value yourself. Money mindset, blah, blah, blah. And look, it's not that's never true. One, undercharging is a maths problem. It's not a feeling problem. Here is some stuff that I hear that is the wrong answer. And if anybody tells you that, run. This is some of the crappiest advice you'll hear. What is the market charging for what you deliver? What is everybody else in the industry doing? Crap, rubbish, absolutely useless information. Why? Because you don't know the rest of the data from your market, from your industry. You don't know if they're being propped up by a rich uncle. You don't know if they're robbing from their mortgage to keep this business going. You don't know if they're massively underpaying their employees. You just don't have enough information. So the last thing you want to be doing to figure out if you're undercharging is look at the marketplace. Okay? Really, really important. Even if they're like, well, look at the top 20%. No, because you don't know. Like, I have looked at businesses that are turning over hundreds of thousands of dollars a month and losing $20,000 a month at the same time. Now, if you looked at what that person was charging and based your business off that, you're very quickly going to end up in the same crappy position they are. It's a bad way to price, bad way to figure out if you're undercharging. So we do it completely differently. We figure out if we're undercharging based on our fixed costs in our business, which includes our non-negotiable profit and your salary for the work that you're doing, because that's a fixed cost. If we took you out of the business, it would collapse, or we'd have to pay someone to do your job. Second bit is, how much capacity do you have? How many hours are you selling? How many projects are you doing? How many shoes are you selling? And then divide the first number by that, the fixed cost things by the capacity number, and have a look. And if that number is less than what you're charging, you are definitely undercharging, because you're also going to have some direct costs. So you're going to add some direct costs in there. And if the number is less than what you're currently charging, then you're undercharging. Numbers don't lie. Unless you are getting a market salary and a profit, you know you're undercharging. Like the moment that I ask someone and I say, what do you pay yourself? And they give me a number, and then I ask what the profit is, and they go, oh, well, that's just what I paid myself. I know you are undercharging, because you're not an idiot. You're a smart, intelligent woman. And so you're not wasting money in your business. You are as efficient and as effective probably as you can get. Look, do I want you to have a system of checking that you're not paying for stuff you don't need? Of course. But fundamentally, pricing is one of the biggest levers we move. And so if your pricing is structurally wrong because you cannot service those fixed costs we've just spoken about, with profit as a non-negotiable cost in there, and the direct costs for your service, your product, the experience, then you're undercharging. And I think the other piece that sometimes gets missed in here is your time, because you forget to price your time at a market rate because you're not paying yourself market rate. You're undercharging if you're not getting a market rate for your work. Really important that even if you do those numbers and you go, it looks really good, but you're not paying yourself yet, watch that one, because you're creating the profit with your time, which is going to keep you busy and probably broke. How do I know if I'm undercharging? Have I allowed for my time? Do I know what my fixed costs are? Have I put profit in there as a non-negotiable? And am I getting paid a market wage? Undercharging hides all four of those things. If you can't say yes to those four things, then you're undercharging. The numbers will tell you. And yes, you are going to have to look at some numbers. And no, I'm not asking you to do calculus. I'm not asking you to do complex math. I'm asking you to do really simple maths, the stuff that you're helping your kids with in their homework. You can do this. Don't care if you're not good with numbers or you don't like numbers. This is maths you can do, I promise. You know if you're undercharging by the numbers. You can't feel if you're undercharging. You can't look at the industry and tell if you're undercharging. You've got to look at the numbers. No avoiding it. And if you're running a business and avoiding the numbers, we're going to end up in a very bad place, because this is the scoreboard. This is how we fund our business and life. It's built for generations. We've got in the show notes a little form, fill it in. You can give us your name. We're happy to share your name. Or if you want it to be anonymous, that's cool too. Let us know. I'd love to answer your question on one of these episodes. This week, I want you to go and find one number. Just one. You don't even have to do any maths for it. It's just a little bit of research. What would you have to pay someone else to do what you're doing in your business? What would it take to replace you at market rate? And right now, you're probably doing some in the business stuff and some on the business stuff. So bear that in mind. It's the higher of those two numbers. If you're in the business doing a job and that's 100,000, and someone being the general manager of your type of business will get paid 150, I'm using easy numbers. It's the 150. That's what it would cost you to replace yourself at market rate. I'm not saying the 150 is a number. You're going to have to go and do some research. And that number there is the starting point for a completely different conversation about what your business needs to generate. Next week, we're going into decisions and how we make them. I want to look at exactly what you need to be doing to stop yourself flip-flopping, backing away, and having to make the same decisions over and over again. I want to go into decisions that make great now and greater in the future. We've got a filter for how we make sure that the decisions you make as today you, future you is stoked about. And once you've got that filter, once you have it, you'll never make decisions in your business the same way again. Till next time, stay Moxie.